Okay, so welcome to Mindful Awakening. I've given us a theme for today of walking with loneliness, and it was inspired from this quote from, I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, I believe it's Jean Vanier. We all carry our own deep wound, which is the wound of our loneliness. Some people think their wound of loneliness will be healed if they come into community, but they will be disappointed. We have to realize that this wound is inherent in the human condition, and that what we have to do is to walk with it instead of fleeing from it. So there's a lot in that. And already there might be some activation in your body based on that quote. This idea that coming into community will be a disappointment because you'll still be lonely. That might be somewhat activating. And if that's the case, I want you to just notice that feeling in your body. And I want you to welcome it. Allow it. And see if you can, even just for a moment at a time, not make that feeling wrong. The fear, even the anger or irritation that might come up in response to what I just read. Also, if you feel a great relief or a feeling of relating, that's not wrong either. Whatever that quote I just read sparked inside of you, which is probably already changing and turning into something else, is okay. So if one thing that I say drops in today, I hope that it's okay however you feel. And that we have to begin there. We have to begin with embracing what we feel. Even if what we feel is really inconvenient or really uncomfortable, such as loneliness. And I know so many people are feeling loneliness. And you know what? So many people were feeling loneliness before this whole pandemic began. There is a loneliness epidemic. It gets talked about in the corporate world a lot. The loneliness in the workplace. And we come up with reasons for this loneliness. That so much of our interactions are virtual these days, and that's, again, before coronavirus. That so much of our interaction is happening virtually, and that's the reason for loneliness. Or rate of addiction is the reason for loneliness, or sort of our productivity-based lifestyle is the reason for loneliness. And yeah, these probably all add to the sense of loneliness. But this quote says, we have to realize that this wound, this loneliness wound, is inherent in the human condition, and that what we have to do is walk with it instead of fleeing from it. So actually what this quote is saying is to feel your loneliness, to embrace it, to not make it wrong. So again, whatever feeling comes up with this idea that just being in community is not going to completely eradicate your feeling of loneliness. Just as that, whatever feeling comes up around that needs to be embraced and felt and radically accepted, so does the loneliness itself. So let's just do a little experiment together. Some of you may be feeling acute loneliness right now. Maybe you are on your own at this time and you're self-isolating on your own. Or maybe you are isolating with a person or people whose presence makes you feel alone. So maybe you're right this second having an acute sense of this loneliness wound. Or maybe you're just very familiar with it because you've encountered it many times in your life. Maybe you learned about loneliness when you were quite small. There's so many different kinds of loneliness. There's the loneliness of actually being alone. So when we're neglected as children, there's that kind of loneliness. But there's also the loneliness of being constantly bombarded by attention or unwanted affection or a kind of rigidity or hypervigilance. That creates its own kind of loneliness because you don't feel seen. Or maybe you didn't really experience a lot of loneliness as a kid. Maybe you weren't left out at school, or maybe your parents did a really good job of balancing the attention. But at some point, you've experienced loneliness. Because it is part of the human condition. And I would actually say it's a human gift. Because our loneliness, when we walk with it instead of flee from it, it delivers us to this beautiful, tender place that actually is total interconnection. So whether you're experiencing acute loneliness right now or you've experienced loneliness in the past, I want you to call on it. And if you're calling on something from the past, my suggestion, since things are already pretty intense in the world right now, don't call on the most intense loneliness you've ever felt. Maybe call on something that's a little less intense. Just, to be kind and gentle to oneself. But bringing up a memory or the acute feeling at this time of loneliness. Remembering that loneliness can be when you're actually alone. Loneliness can also be when you're with someone or with people, but feel more alone in their presence. Loneliness can also be having a particular view of the world or living in a particular paradigm that most other people don't share. So perhaps, for me, here's a loneliness that I experience. So it's very, very hard for me these days to see someone as other, and see someone as deserving of pain and suffering. And so when something terrible occurs, someone creates great suffering and harm for others, and then they are publicly treated as non-human because of that, I feel some loneliness because I still see them as human. And while I might want them to have consequences because that's the way our society works, and because I certainly don't condone these things, some of the stuff that I hear and see people say. For example, about like Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, I think he should go to jail. But the things that I hear people say they wish would happen to him there, that brings up a lot of loneliness for me. Because I just don't relate. And the reason for that is that I've put a lot of time and dedication into connecting with a sense of unconditional love and compassion and acceptance. That's kind of been my life's work for quite some time now. But I understand that's not everyone's life's work. And a lot of people it's not. And that's okay. We're all doing what we're called to do. But that's a moment when I feel lonely. And then I attend to that loneliness in the way that I want to invite you to attend to loneliness. So I gave that personal example because I wanted to just sort of share some of the different ways that loneliness can exist that we might not think of. It's not just I'm lonely because I'm not, with somebody that I love. Or I'm lonely because, I'm not in a relationship, or I'm lonely because I'm in quarantine because we're having a pandemic. There's so many different kinds of loneliness. So, bringing up a sense of loneliness for yourself right now, or tuning into the loneliness that you're currently feeling. So if you're bringing something up, then you're just bringing up a memory of a time you felt lonely. And if you're tuning into acute loneliness, you're just turning towards that experience in your body and maybe noticing the thoughts that are associated with that loneliness. And what I want you to do is see if you can walk with those feelings or sit with those feelings instead of flee from them. What does loneliness actually feel like in your body? Do you feel it in your heart? Does it feel achy? Does it feel empty? Does it sting or burn? Do you feel it in your solar plexus? Or your stomach? Do you feel loneliness around your eyes? Your cheeks? Where does your loneliness live inside your body? And I invite you to let go of the thoughts about the loneliness. And by let go, I don't mean try to get rid of or shut off or quiet. Instead, just let go of the emphasis being there and place it on the actual experience in the body of loneliness. And then just try breathing with that. Just try breathing with that. What is that like? The soft caress of your breath into these places of the body where you're feeling loneliness. That sweet kiss of the movement of the breath on the places where loneliness is present in the body. Sitting with, breathing with, walking with your human loneliness. when you start to tune into something like loneliness, it can intensify. So that ache in your heart of loneliness, as you bring your attention to it, it blossoms, it opens, and it can feel overwhelming for a moment as you start to wake up to it. As you start to breathe with it, to sit with it, to walk with it. But this is not the time to decide that you'd rather flee from the loneliness. Because it so wants to be felt, to be seen. This doesn't mean that we want to drill into our loneliness. So you can always step away from the loneliness and find something beautiful to look at. There are beautiful things in this we're in right now. Things you might not realize are beautiful, but they are. My glasses case is across from me on a nightstand, and there's the button that closes it. It's silver, and it is just shining like a gem right now. There's some light shining on it, and so it's just like it's lit up. It's beautiful. I wouldn't normally think, oh, this glasses case button is beautiful, but it is. It's just silver metal, right? There's a scarf that I have balled up on the floor, which I should hang up. There's a pattern on it that's so beautiful. So I can lean away from my loneliness and connect with something of resource. Maybe even a place in my body that doesn't feel lonely. But that's different from shutting off the loneliness or deciding that it's wrong or trying to fill it up with other things. And I think that's what this quote gets to. Some people think their wound of loneliness will be healed if they come into community. And yes, we need community as humans. It's so important. But the community is something that complements and adds to, not something that fills a hole. And that loneliness, that inherent human loneliness, can be like a big bottomless hole. And it doesn't matter how much community you put in there, how much social media you put in there, how much sugar you put in there, how much alcohol or sex or puzzles. I've been doing a lot of puzzles. It doesn't matter how much you put in, it's still lonely. It's like the Buddhists talk about hungry ghosts, and their big bellies just, they just never get filled up. They're just hungry, more, never filled up. And that can be the same thing with our loneliness wound. And so when we try to use community or anything else to get rid of our loneliness, rather than something to help us walk with our loneliness, then it doesn't really work. And as this quote says, we are disappointed. So we start by just being with the loneliness. And this can apply to anything that's challenging you. We got to start by acknowledging it. Something I've had challenge with in my life is allowing myself to want what I want. And so what I've done in the past is want something, but stuff that want down and not allow myself to have the want. The want doesn't go away, it actually just festers. by the way. Spoiler alert. So if I want something, even if I'm not going to have it, even if it's not possible or if it's not healthy for me or something like this, if I have a want and I don't acknowledge it and accept it as it is, as part of me that's arising in the moment, then I can never get to the point of a less identified kind of wanting. I can never get to a point of a kind of pure, unencumbered wanting. And it's the same thing here with this loneliness. We can't really understand how to soothe this inherent human wound of loneliness until we truly encounter it. Allow it to be seen, allow it to be felt. And I started with talking about how when we truly encounter our loneliness, we can start to move towards the knowing that we are never alone. Because the flip side of the sort of existential loneliness wound of humans, the meaninglessness and the emptiness, is the complete interconnection and profound meaning. The miracle of being and the complete unity with everyone and everything and all times and all places. Forever. So walking with your loneliness isn't just a path to more of a feeling of connection, because it is. When we really encounter our loneliness, then we start to know how to soothe that loneliness in a very human, relative way. We start to be able to make choices that help us to walk with our loneliness, that help us to feel more connected to ourselves and to the whole, right? So there's this really human part of it. So that's one part of what is offered when we walk with our loneliness. But the other part is it's an absolute sense. It's a kind of deep spiritual insight of connection, of oneness. So your loneliness is a gift, and it's a teacher. Your loneliness is a path that's guiding you right back to what you really are, which is just love, 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 love. Okay. Let's do some practice. I'm just going to start by putting my hand on my heart and just embracing this feeling of love, right? As much as it's important to embrace that feeling of loneliness, that feeling of love is really huge when you really, really start to tune into it. It's overwhelming, right? It brings up emotion. So I'm just going to put a hand on this human heart. I'm just going to say, oh, sweetheart, it's so big. It's so vast. This love, it's so big. Just feeling into that for a moment. Breathing into that for a moment. Yeah. Good. So we'll go ahead and we'll practice for a bit. I can't find my watch, so I'm going to aim for half hour. And go ahead and get into a posture that's comfortable for you if you're not already. You can have something supporting behind your back if you want. You can be lying down on the floor or in a bed. You can be standing. Whatever works for you, whatever works for your body. And then once you are in a comfortable posture, go ahead and close your eyes if that feels good for you. And we're going to start by inviting some relaxation into the body. And during this practice, you will have thoughts, most likely. And that is not a problem. Your mind is just doing what a mind does, so we don't need to eradicate it. You also might have physical discomfort, which is really natural for sitting still, especially if you're not used to it. But I invite you to listen to your body, and if your body needs some subtle movement or even not so subtle movement as we do this practice, please do what's right for you and your body in the moment. And the cool thing about doing this virtually and not on Zoom, because none of you are on camera here, you can do whatever your body needs you to do. You can get up and do jumping jacks while I guide the meditation if you want to. But I would suggest, and I would invite you to find some amount of stillness for this practice while listening to what's best for your body. So we'll begin by inviting some relaxation in. Starting at the top of your head, inviting a feeling of relaxation to move down over the head, the scalp, relaxing, the temples relaxing, the forehead, the space between the eyebrows, relaxing. Softening and relaxing into the eyebrows and the space between the eyebrows and down into the eyes and all the little muscles around the eyes. Softening and relaxing. Letting the body let go. So if you feel like you're efforting a lot to relax, I want you to see if you can just let the body do it. Let the body let go. Just gently step aside and let the body do what it knows how to do. Softening down into the jaw, letting the mouth drop open as the jaw releases. Softening down into the neck, muscles in the sides of the neck, the throat, the vocal cords relaxing. And if it's helpful for you to let out any sounds, then feel free. If that feels good in the body, if that feels like it helps with release, feel free to allow sound. Softening, relaxing into the shoulders, and down your arms, into your hands. Let those arms get real heavy. Let gravity just do its job. The arms releasing more and more. Bringing attention to the top of the torso, moving into the chest and the upper back. Relaxing around the heart, the rib cage, front and back, that space between your shoulder blades. Is there somewhere in the armpits that can relax a bit more? Even just imagining like the back of the armpit relaxing, the place where the arm and shoulder connects into the torso. Just imagine that. Softening. And if you find that all this relaxing has kind of created a slumped posture, that's fine if that feels good. It might feel better to lengthen the spine a bit, open up the chest a bit, drop the shoulders. But again, doing what feels best for your body. Moving down into the mid-torso, the solar plexus, the mid-back, space below the rib cage. Relaxing, softening, letting go. Letting the body let go. You let go of trying. You let go of efforting. And let the body soften on its own. Do less. Moving down into the lower abdomen and the lower back. Let that belly be soft. Let that lower back release. Moving into the hips and the seat and the pelvic area. Again, maybe there's a sound. And if it embarrasses you to even consider making a sound, or embarrasses you to hear me make a sound, I want to really encourage you to let some sound out, because there's probably something that wants to release. Softening down into your legs and your feet. Let your lower body get nice and heavy and grounded. For people who joined the grounding support and safety class, you can remember that feeling of gravity grounding you, delivering you into the support of the earth. So really let the lower body move into that place of being grounded and supported. And if you're lying down, just let the whole body do it. Good. Now from this relaxed place, from this place of less effort and less doing, I want you to allow yourself to touch in to any feelings of emotional tenderness, things like loneliness, grief, fear, sadness, anxiety, melancholy, heartbreak, longing, and maybe you don't have anything going on like that right now, in which case I just want you to be here with whatever is present, with as little effort as possible. But if there is some area of emotional tenderness, I invite you to allow it to come to the forefront of consciousness, of somatic awareness. But I don't want you to now bring a lot of effort into deconstructing it or inquiring into it or even meditating on it. I want you to just allow it to exist exactly as it is. As if it's a wild animal in its natural habitat, undisturbed. As if it's just another part of nature. Expressing. Allow it to open and blossom and show itself without prying anything, without forcing anything, without attempting some high state of concentration. Let these tender parts come alive and show you what they want you to know. Let these tender parts be a gift and a teacher in this moment. Walking with these beautiful expressions of your humanity. These beautiful expressions of nature. Beautiful expressions of this vast and unknowable mystery. Of this love. And when the mind starts to talk you out of it, which it will do, because there is something terrifying to the mind about this natural expression. I don't want you to make the mind wrong. Oh, sweet, sweet mind, just doing its job, trying to solve things. Instead, just let those thoughts come and go as part of the expression of your humanness, as part of the expression of nature, as part of the expression of this unknowable and vast mystery, as part of this never-ending expression of love. And as these tender movements in the body unfold and come and go and morph into whatever's next, I want you to start to notice how everything around you is doing the same thing. Even with your eyes closed, if they're closed, you can sense into the changing nature of everything around you. All of it expressing the sounds, the breath, the movement of wind through trees, ripples on a body of water, the expansion of deep space. Just like these tender movements inside of your body, your mind, everything is arising and expressing and passing. And merging with everything else that's arising and passing. Let go of any doing. And just be this. This infinite flow. Now I want you to draw your attention to the place in the body where you're experiencing contraction. If that's not happening for you, then please continue with whatever is happening, whatever you've been led to at this point. But if there is a place in the body that's contracted, that feels in resistance, that feels closed off or shut down or not integrated with the rest of your body, I want you to bring your attention there. With this theme of walking with your loneliness, I want you to be with whatever's here. Really radically be with it. And that doesn't mean that you have to make some decision or take some action. Doesn't mean that any change has to occur today. Doesn't mean you have to double up on your virtual therapy sessions this week. It might mean all of those things, being with this feeling, but it might not. It's unknown what being with this feeling will bring, because it is a brand new, fresh expression, even if it's familiar. It's fresh right now. What will happen if we feel into this area of resistance or contraction or dysregulation or integration? So let's just really deeply allow it to express and to show us. To open and unwind and unfold in whatever way it wants to. And if it helps, ringing that bell of remembering that it is an expression of nature, it is an expression of love. Even if it aches. It's an expression of you and of your connection to everyone and everything and every time and every place and every direction and every reality. At least that's the way it seems to me. And now taking a few nice, slow, deep breaths. Maybe the exhale is a bit slower than the inhale. Maybe it includes a sigh from the mouth. And bringing a little movement to the fingers and the toes, maybe a bit of a roll to the neck. Movement in the shoulders, a sway of the spine. And if your eyes aren't open already, you can go ahead and blink them open. Thank you for practicing with me.